Okay, I'm going to draw a graph, right? So the first graph, here's the function f of x is equal to x squared minus 4x plus 3, right? So to draw your graph, right, you should be able to look at your function. Here's my function. Can you tell me what shape that's going to be and why? So what shape is that going to be? Smiley face. Why is it going to be smiley face? Why is it going to be a curve first off? Because it's an x squared term. And why is it going to be a smiley face as opposed to a sad face? Because it's positive. And when it's positive, you're smiling. Right? Okay. So you know what shape it's going to be before you start. Okay? So then the next thing you want to do is you get your points. Okay? Sorry, I should have told you the domain. It will tell you in the question the domain -1 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 5. Okay, so that just means draw it, take all the x values between -1 and 5. It'll tell you this in the question. So that means you're going to end up with -1 something, 0 something, 1 something, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? Right. Onto your calculator. So, right, so calculator. I'll just magnify a small bit. And I'll put on the light because it's easier to see the calculator. Right, okay, so the first thing you have to do is you have to get your table up. So you press menu or mode on years up in the corner. We turn it on first, and then you press mode and you press number 3 is the table. Okay, and you get f of x equals. So then you type in x squared minus 4x plus 3. So it's the x is the red over the close bracket. So to access the red, you press this alpha button first. So alpha and the close bracket will get me up the x. X squared minus 4 alpha and the close bracket will get me an x again. Right, plus 3. And you can see you have the function up there. So equals is your enter key, so let's enter it. Right, now, don't mind that won't come up in years. Right, the next thing that will come up in years is start. So the start is the first point. So your start is -1. So you put in small minus and 1. A 1 is in there already, but you just type over it. Okay, equals the end is 5. There's a 5 in there already, so I don't need to change it. Step 1, it's always step 1. Right, so you just press equals, right, and all your points will come up. So my points are -1, -1, 8, 0, 3, 1, 0, 2.
Excuse me, please. Would Abby Costello,
-1.
6th year, come to reception now, please? Abby Costello. Apologies. Also, Robin Quinlan Duffy to reception now.
3, 0, 4, 3, and sorry, 5, 8. Okay, so there's your points to draw the graph. Okay, are we okay drawing the points? Can I just jump on to this is one I've done earlier? Yes, Quiva.
Does it matter if you do a small one or just...
Say that again. Does it matter?
If you do a small one, like
Oh no, yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Right, okay, are we okay? We're all okay? Are you okay drawing the points? Right, so when you're drawing this, you look at your x values. So your x values are between -1 and 5. So your x-axis, you want to go from -1 all the way over to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and your y values are your second values. So the highest one there is 8, and the lowest one is -1. So you want to go up as far as 8, so and so on. I'm not doing it now. You go down to -1. Is that okay? Is everyone okay drawing the graph? Does anyone need any direction on that? Right, okay. So it's drawn out already this is the ordinary level book. So it's not in your book, so you just need to look up. Right, so there it is drawn. So it was -1, 8, 0, 3, 1, 0, 2, -1, 3, 0, 4, cross 4 up to 3, and 5, 8 again. Is that right? And it was a smiley face as predicted. Right, and when you're drawing a smiley face, don't use a ruler. Right, if you're drawing a curve, draw it freehand. If you're drawing a line, use a ruler. Okay? Right, now let's work on the questions. Part 1. The coordinates of the points where the curve crosses the x-axis. Now, are they looking for an x value, a y value, or a point? What are they looking for? Points. Right, okay, so that's the first thing you ask yourself. Am I looking for an x value, a y value, or a point? And I'm looking for a point here, right? So they want to know what are the points where the curve crosses the x-axis. So what are the points where the curve crosses the x-axis? It crosses here. What's the coordinates of that point, please? 1, 0. What's the coordinate? And it crosses here. What's the coordinates of that? 3, 0. If they ask me for just the x values where it crosses the y-axis, right? Or sorry, the x values where it crosses the x-axis, what answer would you give me? Minus 1 and 3, wouldn't you? Sorry, 1 and 3. Is that okay? Right. Can anyone tell me another way they might phrase that question? They might, the roots of f of x, right? They might ask you for the roots of f of x equals 0, right? And that's another way of saying where does the graph cross the x-axis. So you just say 1 and 3, right? Can I just bring it down to this question? I know we're not doing it. The values of x for when f of x equals 0. That's the same thing, right? Okay? Is that all right? And if you bring it down further again to the next question, the values of x for which f of x equals 0. Tell me in ordinary language, what are they looking for? What are they looking for? Where the curve crosses the x-axis, right? Okay, does everyone see the different ways to ask the same question? Because they always ask this question. So it'll always be f of x equals 0. That's another way of saying where f of x is another way of saying y. So they want to know where is y equals 0. Y equals 0 is the x-axis, right? Y equals 0 is the x-axis. So they want to know where does the curve cross the x-axis, right? Are we okay with that question? Right, because they love that question. They're always asking it. Right, so back up to question 1. Next one is the value of y when x is 2. So they're telling me what? Which one are they telling me? X. And they're asking me to find y. So they're telling me x is 2, right? So that means I have to go to the x-axis and I have to go to 2 on the x-axis, right? Okay, so I go to x-axis, I go to 2 on the x-axis, up or down? Down. Why down? That's where the curve is. And then you go across and you read off that answer. Now that's not very straight, but that should be -1, okay? It should be at -1 there. It's very badly drawn. Is that okay? Right. Can anyone give me another way where they might ask me where x is 2? If x is 2, what might they have asked me? F of 2. They could have said f of 2, couldn't they? Right, because normally they say f of x. Isn't that right? So if I wrote down f of 2, I'm basically telling you x is 2, aren't I? Or I'm telling you the input is 2, and remember x is always the input, right? So for most of the questions, they're going to tell you x and ask you to get y, or tell you y and ask you to get x. You just have to figure out which one they're telling you, right? And if it's in the brackets, that means it's the input, which means it's x. So if they tell you x, you start on the x-axis, draw a line, go across to the y-axis. If they tell you y, you'd start on the y-axis, go across, hit the curve and go down. Is that right? Okay, right. The next question here is the values of x when y equals 8. So what are they telling me there? They're telling me what? Y equals 8. And therefore they're asking me what does x is. So you go to 8 on the y-axis. Y on the y-axis, cause y equals 8, okay? So I go to 8 on the y-axis. Now, when I draw a line here, girls, it's going to hit it twice, isn't it? Is that right? So if it hits it twice, you have two answers, right? So one answer is here. That's one answer. What's that? -1, right? And the other answer is, draw a line down here. That's your other answer. What's that? 5, right? And show your work. Physically draw on your graph, okay? So, you know, show your work for all questions. How do you show your work for this question? You draw the line in on the graph. So don't be trying to, you know, read it off without drawing the line. Draw the line, okay? Is that all right? Okay. The equation of the axis of symmetry of the curve. Right, we spoke of axis of symmetry yesterday. Axis of symmetry, girls, is a line that basically divides the curve so that one half is the mirror image of the other half. So would you agree it's down here? Would you agree that's the axis of symmetry?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Can anyone tell me what that is? It always goes through what on the x-axis? It always goes through number 2 on the x-axis, doesn't it? Right, so the name of that line is x equals 2. Is that right? Okay, so the name of that line is x equals 2. If I asked you for the axis of symmetry down on this one, what would you say? This one here. What's the name of that line? X equals 0. What about this one down here? Sorry, down again. Down there. What about the axis of symmetry here? X equals 1. Right. Okay, what would the axis of symmetry in this one over here be? This one. X equals 1 again. What would the axis of symmetry be here? X equals 10, sorry, you can't see it. X equals 10, I'd say. Right, okay. Do you all get what the axis of symmetry is? Right, okay. So, the next question, number 2. Right, so again you draw. Right, okay, so you look at this. Right, sorry, before you draw, you look at it and you say x squared. We don't care about anything else. We just know there's an x squared term. So that makes it smiley or sad face. Smiley face or sad face. Right? Say that again. Smiley face. Yeah, it's positive. When you're a positive, we're smiling. Right? Is that okay? Now, this one. The value of x for when f of x equals 0. That's the question. What's the question? What question am I talking about? What are they asking me? The values of x where the curve cuts the x-axis, right? Okay, and how do we know this? We learn it, okay? So we learn it that's the question that can be asked in lots of different ways, and they're basically asking me to give the x values where it cuts the x-axis. So answer please, there's the graph. Answer please. -1 and 1. And they didn't ask me for the points, they just asked me for the x values. Is that alright? Okay. The values of x for when f of x equals 3. Now, f of x equals 3. Are they telling me x or y? Y. How do you know they're telling me y? Because f of x is another way of writing what? Y. Or you could also say it's not in the brackets, it's outside the brackets, so therefore it's the output, and the output is y. So over here, I go to y is equal to 3, right, okay? So I go to the y-axis, I go to 3 on the y-axis, I draw a line across. How many times am I going to hit the curve? Twice, okay? Draw a line across, draw a line down so you can read off the two values, because if you hit it twice, there's 2 answers. If you hit it 10 times, there's 10 answers, right? Okay, so what is the answer? -2 and 2. Now these are easy ones. The answers are going to be whole numbers, but if they're decimals, you guess, right? Okay, so if it looks like it's 1.3, you say 1.3, right? Your graph might say 1.3, someone else's graph might say 1.1, right? But whatever your graph says is the right answer. Is that okay? Is that right? Next one. The values of x for when x is 2. The values of f of x. F of x is another way of saying y. So we're looking for the value of y when x is 2. Right? How do I get x is 2? I go to 2 on the x-axis. I draw a line up, hit the graph, draw a line across, and read off the answer. What is the answer? 3. Right, okay. And the values of f of x when x is naught. X is naught is a special line. X is naught is what line? X is naught is the... It's always the opposite axis. So y is naught is the x-axis. So what's x equals naught? The y-axis. So we want the y value where the curve crosses the y-axis. So the y value is -1, isn't it? Okay? And the coordinates of the minimum point of the curve, the minimum is the lowest point of the curve, and we want the coordinates of the point. So what's the coordinates of that point here? 0, -1. I'll ignore all the people who said -1, 0. Right, is that okay? 0, -1. Are we okay with that? Right. Yes. Can I do IV again? Right. Okay. So IV is the values of f of x. What's f of x? Another way of saying what? Y. So I want the y values when x is 0. Now x is 0 is a special line. X is 0 is the y-axis. What's y is 0? What special line is y is 0? The x-axis. So x is 0 is the y-axis. So I want the y value at the y-axis, where the curve crosses the y-axis. So the curve crosses the y-axis right here. And I just have to give the y value. So I don't give 0, -1. I don't give 0. What do I give? -1. So I just give the y value. Is that okay, Niamh? Right, okay. Will I go on to the next one? Is it a bit clearer? Right, okay. Next one here, number 3. Right, here's my graph. Right, before I showed it to you already, so it doesn't matter. But looking at that, you would immediately say what? Smiley face. Okay? So you can look at it, and then when you draw it, you know you're right. Okay? So smiley face. Use the graph. Now that's important, because there's other ways to do these sums, but they say use your graph. So if you do it any other way, you won't get the marks because you haven't followed the instructions. Estimate. Now estimate, that's a good word, isn't it? Because estimate means your graph will be different to your graph, will be different to your graph, etc. Okay? And that's fine. Okay? The values of x. So we're looking for x values, aren't we? So we're just looking for x values for which f of x equals 0. Tell me about f of x equals 0. That's the x-axis, and where it cuts the x-axis, isn't it? So you have to give the x values where it cuts the x-axis. So here, it's here, so it's somewhere between -1 and 2. I'd say -1.4, give or take. I know it's hard to read on that, okay? -1.5 maybe, halfway, right? Would you agree? And there's another one over here. What would you call that one? 3.5, 3.4, whatever you think. Is that right? Okay. And we're estimating. So you'll get marks for 3.4, you'll get marks for 3.5, you'll probably get marks for 3.6, etc. Right? Okay. The values of x for which f of x equals 6. Now, are they telling me x or are they telling me y? They're telling me y, because x is in the bracket. So if they're telling me y, they're asking me to find what? X. Would you agree? Right. So I have to go to 6 on the y-axis. So you go to 6 on the y-axis, and look, you ask yourself, do I go left or right? And you notice that the curve is on both sides, so you go both ways. So you draw a line over, hit the curve, draw a line down so you can read the value off, and draw a line down so you can read that x value off very clearly, and that one will be about 4.4. Right, this one, that's crooked, but it's probably -2.6 or something like that. Okay? Again, what your graph says is the right answer. Right, are we okay with that? Right, next one, the value of f of -3. Are they telling me x or y? How do you know they're telling you x? Because it's in the bracket, so that makes it the input, which x is the input. So they're telling me x is -3. So if they're telling me x, what are they asking me for? What's y? So I go to the x-axis, I go to -3 on the x-axis, I draw a line, I hit the curve, right? I draw a line across so I can read off the y value very clearly, and what's the answer? 10, right? So my answer is y is 10. Are we okay with that? And the next one is the value of f of 1, right? So that means everywhere, sorry, are they telling me x or y? X. How do you know they're telling you x? It's in the bracket, so that means it's the input. So they're telling me x is 1. So then you ask yourself, where will I find x is 1? And the clue is in the question. You'll find x is 1 on the x-axis, won't you? So you go to 1 on the x-axis. Now this time, in order to hit the curve, I have to go down. So I go down, hit the curve. Once I hit the curve, draw a line across and read off the answer. And what is the answer? -6. Right, okay. One more quick question. Right, okay. And then we can go back to our higher level questions, okay? Right. Are we feeling a bit better about them? Yeah. Right, okay. So here we have, look, before I show you the graph, which I've already shown you. Right, look at this, please. There's an x squared term, isn't there? So that makes either happy or sad. And are we happy or sad here? Sad, because it's negative. Right, so that means we're sad. Right, okay, and when you get your points and draw it, you'll end up with a graph like that. Is that okay? The roots of the equation f of x equals 0. That's another way of asking our favourite question. What are they, dumb it down for ourselves, what are they asking me? Where does it cut the x-axis? Where does it pass over the x-axis? Answer please. -1 and 3. Right, next one. The values of x for which f of x equals 3. Are they telling me x or y? Y. So I go to the y-axis, I go to 3 on the y-axis, and I draw a line. Now it's going to hit the curve twice. So it's hitting the curve right on 3 there, and it's hitting it here. So what's the x values here? 0. And the x value here would be 2. Right? The next one is the values of x for which f of x equals -2. Are they telling me x or y? Y, because it's not in the bracket. So if it's not in the bracket, it's the output, and the output is y. So you go to the y-axis, you go to -2 on the y-axis, you draw a line across. Right, okay, where's my ruler? So you draw a line across at -2. Again, you go left and right because it's going to hit the curve twice. So you have to get the x value at both of those points. So the x value there is -1.5, and the x value here is 3.5. Okay, and again, it's estimate. So if you said 3.4 or 3.6, you'd be right. Okay, are we okay with that? Yeah. Right. Where am I now? The value of f of 2. Are they telling me f or y? X or y even? X. So you go to x is 2, go up, go across. Answer? 3. Right. The value of f of -1.5. Are they telling me x or y? X. How do you know it's x? Because it's in the bracket. So you go to -1.5. So that's -1.5. It's there. Go down, go across, and your answer is -2. Right? Okay. The equation of the axis of symmetry of the curve. You told me this already. The axis of symmetry is the line you draw to make one side the image of the other. So this would be the axis of symmetry. I get marks for drawing it in, even if I can't name it, right? But I can name it because Miss Enright told you how to name it. So what's the name of that line? X equals 1, right? You can't just call it 1, you have to say x equals 1. So everywhere in that line, x equals 1, right?
What the graph goes up in, or what number it goes through?
What number it goes through on the x-axis, right? So it always goes through 1, right? Is that okay? And the coordinates, now we're looking for coordinates of a point, right? Of the maximum point of the curve. So what are the coordinates of the maximum point of the curve? 1. What? Who said 4, 1? Get out. What is that? What is that? 1, 4. Thank you. 1, 4. Right? Better? Right. Okay. Right.